"Surprise!" Mom shouted, yanking the red bow off my car while cameras flashed, and Derek pretended to be shocked. The cheers were deafening. "You're the best parents ever," he cried, gripping keys I bought with a year of double shifts. I stepped forward, shaking. "That's my car." Mom didn't blink. "Emily, it's in our name. Be happy for your brother." I was still paying the insurance, still paying for the brake job, still paying while he posted selfies, calling it his. But what they didn't know, I kept every receipt, every email, every text. They stole it in public. I'm taking it back in court, and when I do, the whole neighborhood will hear the truth. My name is Emily Carter, and I'm 45 years old. Each morning starts at 4:30 a.m. when I slide behind my desk at Miller & Sons Accounting, the same firm where I've worked double shifts for 15 years. My brother Derek, the family. Golden child, bounces between our parents' guest room and whatever job hasn't fired him yet. The scent of motor oil lingers on my hands from Sunday maintenance, a habit my father taught me before choosing favorites. My mother's voice carries that familiar guilt-inducing tone whenever she calls, usually about Derek's latest temporary setback. But what they don't know about are the matching accordion files in my closet. Every receipt, every repair, invoice, every insurance payment carefully logged since day one. Their perfect son may coast through life, but I've learned to document everything. Trust without proof invites theft. I can still remember the day I bought that car, a 2018 Toyota Camry in deep blue pearl. Nothing fancy, just reliable wheels that would get me from point A to point B without drama. But to me, that car meant everything. I'd worked every scrap of overtime Miller & Sons would give me, tracking each extra hour in a little notepad I kept in my purse. 6 months of double shifts, brown bag lunches, and saying no to everything that wasn't essential. You know that feeling when you've earned something entirely on your own? When every dollar came from your own sweat? That's what that car was to me. The salesman probably thought I was crazy, the way I ran my fingers along the hood that first day, checking every inch, like I was inspecting fine jewelry. But I didn't care. This was my independence, my proof that sacrifice meant something. For 3 months, everything was perfect. I could take extra projects at work without worrying about bus schedules. No more calling friends for rides or scheduling my life around public transport. Just me, my keys, and the open road. The dashboard lights glowed like tiny stars at night, and sometimes I'd sit in the parking lot after work, just savoring the quiet. Then came that Sunday dinner at my parents' house. Mom had made her famous pot roast, the one that filled the house with that rich, savory smell that always reminded me of childhood Sundays. Dad cleared his throat halfway through the meal, dabbing his mouth with his napkin in that way he does when he's about to talk business. "Emily, honey," he said, "your mother and I have been thinking about your car insurance." I looked up from my plate. "What about it?" "Well, we've been comparing rates," Mom chimed in, sliding the potatoes my way. "If you put the car under our policy, under our names, you could save almost 40%. We've got that multi-car discount, plus our long history with the company." It sounded reasonable enough. I mean, who doesn't want to save money? But something made me pause. Maybe it was the way Derek, my brother, suddenly got interested in his green beans, or how his eyes kept drifting to my car keys on the counter. "That's thoughtful," I said carefully, "but I'm okay with my current rate." "Don't be silly," Mom pressed. "Family helps family. It's just paperwork." Derek looked up then. "Hey, sis, how's she handle on the highway? Good mileage?" His tone was casual, but something in it made my stomach tighten. Before I could answer, Dad was already pulling out the forms. "I picked these up from the DMV yesterday. Just a signature, and we'll handle everything else." I stared at those papers. Certificate of title transfer, registration application, insurance change forms. All laid out neat and official on the dining room table between the pot roast and dinner rolls. My pen hovered over the signature line, while Mom talked about premium rates, and Dad nodded along. You ever have that moment when your gut is screaming at you to stop, but your brain is telling you you're being paranoid. That's where I was, sitting there with that pen in my hand. I told myself I was being ridiculous. These were my parents, after all. The people who'd packed my school lunches and kissed my scraped knees. I signed. One quick scrawl across 3 different forms, and it was done. Later that evening, I walked out to the driveway. The sun was setting, painting, everything in soft orange light. I could hear voices through the open windows. Mom and Derek discussing his upcoming graduation, planning some kind of celebration. My hand rested on my car's hood, still warm from the day's heat. "You're being sensible," I whispered to myself, but the words felt hollow somehow. Derek's laugh drifted out through the window, followed by Mom's excited chatter about celebration plans. I pulled my keys from my pocket, the familiar weight suddenly feeling different in my hand. As I stood there in the growing dusk, I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, in some meeting I hadn't been invited to, decisions were being made about things that belonged to me. 2 weeks after signing those papers, I stood in my parents' backyard, surrounded by blue and gold streamers that rustled in the June breeze. Derek's graduation party was in full swing. You know how these things go. Folding chairs scattered across the lawn, potato salad sweating on paper plates, and enough proud relatives with cameras to document every blessed moment. Something felt off, though. Mom and Dad were practically bouncing on their toes, exchanging these little looks that made my skin prickle. Mom kept herding people closer together, arranging them like props in some play I hadn't gotten the script for. Dad had his big announcement, Smile On, the one he usually saved for company Christmas parties or when he was about to tell everyone about a surprise vacation. If I could have everyone's attention, Mom's voice carried across the yard, cutting through the chatter. "We have a very special surprise for our graduate." You know that moment when you're watching a car accident about to happen, when time slows down, but you can't do anything to stop it? That's how I felt as my parents started shepherding everyone toward the driveway. My car sat there, looking exactly as it had that morning when I'd parked it, except for one thing. A massive red satin bow perched on the hood, gleaming in the afternoon sun like a target. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might be sick. "Derek, honey," Dad announced, his voice carrying for the benefit of the whole crowd. "Your mother and I couldn't be prouder of your achievement. And to show you just how proud we are." With a flourish that would have made a game show host jealous, Mom whisked the bow off the hood. "Surprise! Your very own car!" The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Phones appeared like magic, recording the moment from every angle. Derek's face lit up with a joy that might have been touching if it hadn't been so twisted with triumph when his eyes met mine. "Oh my God!" He rushed forward, wrapping our parents in a bear hug. "You guys are the best parents ever. I can't believe it." I stepped forward, my voice struggling to stay steady. "That's my car." The words came out smaller than I meant them to, nearly lost in the continued applause. Mom turned, her smile never wavering. "Emily, dear, don't make a scene. You know the car's registered in our names." "But I bought it," I insisted louder this time. "With my money, from working double shifts. The EHG registration was just supposed to be for insurance purposes." Dad stepped closer, lowering his voice but keeping that plastic smile firmly in place. "Now, Emily, this is about helping family. Your brother needs reliable transportation for his new job. You understand, don't you?" Heat crept up my neck and into my cheeks. Around us, the party guests had gone quiet, watching the drama unfold like it was some daytime soap opera. A few were still, clapping, the sound hollow and awkward now. The worst part wasn't the theft, it was how they'd staged it, made it public, turned my humiliation into entertainment. Every iPhone pointed my way felt like a spotlight on my powerlessness. Derek circled the car, my car, trailing his fingers along the paint I'd so carefully maintained. When he reached the driver's side, his reflection smirked at me in the window. He picked up the bow and placed it back on, the hood with exaggerated care, like he was marking his territory. I opened my mouth to speak again, but the sound of engines starting drowned out whatever I might have said. The party was breaking up. voices rising in a chorus of congratulations and goodbye calls. Derek was already sliding into the driver's seat, adjusting mirrors I'd positioned perfectly for my height. Through the windshield, I watched him grip my steering wheel with hands that had never known a day of overtime. The leather cover I'd saved 3 weeks to buy disappeared beneath his palms. I followed my parents into the kitchen, my hands shaking so bad I had to clench them into fists. Through the window, I could see Derek showing off the car to his friends, popping the hood like he'd ever changed a single oil filter himself. "We need to talk about this." I pulled my phone from my pocket, opening my banking app. "Right now." Mom busied herself arranging deviled eggs on a platter. "There's nothing to discuss, Emily. The guests are waiting for dessert." "Nothing to discuss?" My laugh came out harsh. "I've got every payment right here. The down payment, $8,000. That was my savings, my overtime for a year." I scrolled through the transactions, each one a reminder of early mornings and missed weekends. Insurance premiums, every month like clockwork. $300 for the brake job just last month. Dad reached for a paper plate, loading it with chips. "You're being dramatic. This is what families do. We help each other." "Help each other?" The words tasted bitter. How exactly am I being helped by having my car stolen? "Stolen?" Mom's head snapped up. "We did not steal anything. You signed the registration over to us." "For insurance purposes." I jabbed my finger at the banking app. "Look at this. The next premium payment is already scheduled. I'm still paying insurance on a car I can't even drive." "Then cancel it," Dad said flatly. "Derek can handle his own insurance now." Through the kitchen doorway, I could see guests filling their plates at the buffet, carefully avoiding eye contact. The whispers weren't quite quiet enough to miss. Derek chose that moment to swagger in, keys dangling from his fingers. The same lanyard I'd picked, out at the dealer, the one with the little compass charm because I'd finally found my direction. "Don't worry, sis." His smile was all teeth. "I'll take good care of it, promise." I reached for the lanyard, my lanyard, but he pulled back, dropping the keys into his pocket with a jingle that felt like a lock clicking shut. "Emily," Mom's voice carried that warning tone she'd used since we were kids. "Let it go." "Let it go?" I turned back to them. "You've taken everything I worked for, humiliated me in front of everyone, and now I'm supposed to just let it go?" "We've given you so much," Dad said. "Paid for your community college classes, which I paid back, every penny. Helped with your first apartment deposit, also paid back." "You're being ungrateful," Mom cut in. "This is about your brother's future. What about my present?" I held up my phone again. "I need my car to get to work. I can't afford—" The sound of an engine revving cut through my words. Through the window, I watched Derek back my car out of the driveway. His friends whooped and hollered as he gunned it down the street, taillights growing smaller until they vanished around the corner. I stood there, surrounded by paper plates and potato salad, trapped between two different kinds of silence. Mine, raw and ragged with betrayal. Theirs, smooth and dismissive, already moving on to the next task. My phone buzzed, a reminder about the upcoming insurance payment. $300 that would auto-draft in 5 days, paying to insure a car I no longer had access to. The empty space at the curb where my car should have been drew me outside like a magnet. The concrete still held a faint oil stain from where I'd changed the transmission fluid last month. I crouched down, touching the rough surface. "This isn't over," I whispered, more to myself than the stain. "This isn't how my story ends." Standing up, I brushed off my knees and turned toward the house. Behind me, someone's wind chimes clinked in the evening breeze, the same sound my keys used to make back when they were still mine. The next morning hit like a slap. My alarm went off at 5 a.m., normal time for my usual 30-minute drive to work. But now, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at bus schedules on my phone, trying to piece together a route that wouldn't get me fired. 2 transfers, I muttered, tracing the lines with my finger. And if the first bus runs late, I miss the connection on 5th Street. The closest stop was a 15-minute walk, and the whole trip would take nearly 2 hours. My stomach clenched. I'd been punctual for 6 years straight. The coffee maker gurgled in the background, a sound that usually meant time to grab my travel mug and keys. Now it just reminded me of everything I couldn't do. No quick stops for groceries after work, no weekend drives to the beach, no freedom. I picked up my phone, hesitated, then dialed Mom's number. It rang 4 times before she answered. "Emily, it's early. Mom, I need the car back. I can't get to work without—" "Oh, not this again," she sighed, that theatrical sound she'd perfected over years, of dealing with what she called my difficult phases. "You're overreacting, dear. Take the bus for a while. It'll do you good. The bus will make me late. I could lose my job. Then leave earlier." Her voice took on that dismissive tone I knew too well. "Derek needs reliable transportation for his new internship. He's starting his career. And I'm trying to keep mine. Mom, please." Click. I stared at the phone, jaw tight. Fine. Maybe Derek would listen to reason. I typed out a text. "Car needs oil change every 5,000 miles. I have maintenance records and mechanic's number. Also, timing belt due soon." His response came quickly. "Chill, sis. Taking her on road trip next week. Miami, here we come." My hands shook as I pictured my carefully maintained engine burning out somewhere on I-95. I fired back, "That's 800 miles. You need to check." "Already got the boys lined up. Party Road. Trip." "Thanks for the sweet ride." I closed the messages, feeling sick. The bus schedule glared up at me, its tight connections like a ticking clock. I grabbed my bag and started walking. 2 hours and 1 missed connection later, I stood in front of HR, explaining why I was 45 minutes late. Sandra, who'd known me since orientation, looked uncomfortable. "First warning, Emily. 3 strikes and we have to take action." She made a note. "In my file. Can you get this sorted soon?" "I'm trying," I said, watching her write. Another mark against me. Another piece of control slipping away. That evening, I spread bills across my kitchen table like tarot cards, telling a future I didn't want to see. Insurance payment due in 4 days. Credit card statement showing the recent brake job. Bus passes I'd need to buy. Each piece of paper represented money flowing out while my options shrank. I grabbed a legal pad and wrote "options" at the top. Under it, "ask again." I drew a line through it. Today had proven that was useless. "Document everything" went next, followed by "find advice." I stared at the last one, then circled it twice. Hard as it was to admit, I couldn't fix this alone. My tea had gone cold, untouched while I'd sorted papers. A dull throb pulsed behind my eyes, the kind that comes from clenching your jaw all day. I reached for the cabinet where I kept aspirin, then stopped. Instead, I pulled out a manila folder, the one where I'd stored every receipt, every maintenance record, every insurance statement since the day I bought the car. I spread them on the table, each one a reminder of my dedication. 6 years of responsible ownership, documented in ink and official letterhead. These weren't just papers. They were proof. Proof that I'd earned this, maintained it, cared for it. Proof that might matter to someone who could help. I sorted the documents by date, creating neat stacks that felt like building something new. Tomorrow, I decided, pressing my fingers against my temples, I needed to find someone who could tell me if all this careful record-keeping could become something more than memories. I'd always loved visiting Aunt Marlene's house. Even now, walking up her neat brick path, I caught that familiar scent of roses from the carefully tended bushes. She wasn't Mom's favorite sister, probably because she never sugar-coated anything, but she'd always been mine. "Emily?" She opened the door before I could knock. "You look like you haven't slept in days." "That obvious, huh?" I tried to smile, but my face felt stiff. Her home office was exactly as I remembered. Wall-to-wall filing cabinets, color-coded folders, and a desk that could have landed a small plane. Aunt Marlene had been the best legal secretary in 3 counties before retiring, and it showed in every labeled drawer and tabbed binder. "So," she said, settling into her chair, "tell me everything." I laid out the whole story. The registration transfer, the graduation gift, the insurance payment still coming out of my account. With each detail, her face grew more serious. When I finished, she adjusted her reading glasses and held out her hand. "Let me see those registration papers." I passed them over, watching as she studied each line. The clock on her wall ticked steadily while she read, reminding me of all the time I'd already lost. Finally, she looked up. "Well, honey, I won't sugarcoat this. Legally speaking, they've got you over a barrel. The car's in their name, which means it's their property to give away." My stomach dropped. But I paid for everything. The down payment, the insurance, the repairs. Money spent doesn't trump names on paper. She tapped the registration form. The law cares about documentation first, fairness second. I slumped in my chair, feeling the floor tilt under me. But Aunt Marlene wasn't finished. "However," she said, reaching for a legal pad, "there might be a way to build leverage. Tell me exactly what your parents said about the insurance arrangement." "They said it would be cheaper if the car was in their name." I straightened up. "I have texts about it. They specifically called it an insurance reason thing." She started writing. "Good. And you've kept records of your payments?" "Everything." Finally, something I'd done right. Every receipt, premium statement, repair bill. I've got it all filed by date. Even better. She smiled that sharp smile I remembered from childhood, the one that meant she'd spotted something others had missed. "Here's what matters: dates, amounts, and their exact wording about the arrangement. We need to show this wasn't a gift. It was a misrepresentation." The word hit like a key turning in a lock. Misrepresentation? They told you it was for insurance purposes when they clearly intended to give the car away. That's not just unfair, it's actionable. She started making a list. Get me everything. Purchase documents, insurance statements, maintenance records, and those texts? They're gold. The more we can prove they knew what they were doing. I grabbed my phone, already scrolling through old messages. I saved screenshots of Derek talking about the car before graduation. He knew they were planning this. Perfect. She handed me a sheet of paper covered in her neat handwriting. "Here's your checklist. We need to build a paper trail that tells the real story, one that even your parents can't talk their way around." Walking home, I held that checklist like a map. For the first time since the graduation party, I felt something solid under my feet. Not hope exactly, more like purpose. That evening, I spread my files across the kitchen table. Each envelope held another piece of evidence: the initial loan paperwork, insurance cards with my name as primary driver, mechanics invoices I'd paid myself. I lined them up by date, watching 6 years of history unfold in paper and ink. Derek's voice floated through my memory. "Free upgrade." He'd laughed at the graduation party, jingling my keys. But nothing about this had been free. Every dollar was documented, every payment recorded. I opened a fresh notebook and wrote one line at the top: "Prove the story on paper." Below it, I started listing dates, pulling figures from receipts, copying text messages that showed what they'd really planned. This was no longer about just getting my car back. This was about proving that careful documentation and truth still mattered. The next morning, I woke before my alarm, my mind already sorting through digital folders and dusty drawers. You know that feeling when you finally have a plan? Like your brain's been waiting to get started? I'd taken the day off work, couldn't risk another late arrival anyway, and set up Command Central at my kitchen table. My laptop hummed while I logged into every account I could think of. Banking exports first. I pulled 6 years of statements, each insurance payment highlighted in neat yellow stripes. The printer wheezed out page after page of proof. "Let's see them talk their way around this," I muttered, sorting the stack into chronological order. The total made me wince. Nearly $7,000 in insurance payments alone. My email archive was next. I'd forgotten how many messages I'd saved. Quotes from mechanics, confirmation receipts, even that thread where Mom insisted I register the car in their name. "It'll save so much on premiums, honey," she'd written. "Just trust us on this." The words had a different weight now. I screenshotted everything, especially the timestamps. Remember when our parents told us to always save receipts? Funny how their lesson came back to bite them. The text messages were harder to read. Derek's tone jumped off the screen. Can't wait to take this baby on a road trip. That was 2 weeks before graduation. He'd known. They'd all known. My fingers shook a little as I added those to the pile. Have you ever noticed how betrayal looks different on paper? All those casual messages lined up like evidence at a crime scene. I built the timeline on a legal pad Aunt Marlene had given me. Purchase date, registration transfer, every payment since. The pattern was clear as daylight. My money, their names, their gift to give away. Around noon, Aunt Marlene came by to review it all. She spread the documents across the table like she was dealing cards, her reading glasses perched on her nose. Look at this phrasing, she said, tapping one of Mom's emails. For insurance purposes only. That's inducement. Plain and simple. They got you to sign based on false pretenses. You really think it's enough? More than enough. She shuffled through the payment records. They can't claim it was always meant as a gift when they've got you paying insurance even after they gave it away. The timeline kills that argument. For the first time since the graduation party, I felt something like momentum. The bus brakes squealed outside my window. My new daily soundtrack. But today, it sounded less like failure and more like a steady beat. A metronome counting down to action. We drafted the demand letter together, Aunt Marlene's legal experience shaping my anger into something sharp and professional. Return the vehicle or provide full reimbursement for all documented expenses. The certified mail receipt was already filled out, waiting for tomorrow. My phone buzzed while we worked. A Facebook notification. Derek had posted a photo of himself leaning against my car, with some sappy caption about blessed to have such amazing parents. The comments were full of hearts and congratulations. My thumb hovered over the comment button. I could tell my side right now, lay out the whole ugly truth for everyone to see. But Aunt Marlene caught my hesitation. Not yet, she said quietly. Let the paper speak first. Social media's like a hammer. This needs a scalpel. She was right. I set the phone face down and focused on our stack of evidence instead. 6 years of careful record-keeping was about to do the talking for me. Chapter 7, Scene 1. The email hit my inbox at 6:17 a.m. I was still in my robe, first coffee barely touched, when the notification lit up my phone. The subject line alone made my stomach clench. Vehicle transfer confirmation. DMV records update. I clicked it, with trembling fingers. There it was in black and white. My parents had transferred the title directly to Derek. No more gray area about borrowed registration or family arrangements. They'd handed him complete ownership. Just like that. You ever had the wind knocked clean out of you? Like someone sucker punched you right in the solar plexus? That's how it felt reading those 3 paragraphs of bureaucratic language confirming what I'd feared most. The demand letter sitting on my desk might as well have been scratch paper now. I called Aunt Marlene immediately, my voice cracking as I read her the email. They beat us to it, I said. They made it official before we could even fight back. Come over, she said. Right now. Bring everything. 20 minutes later, I was at her kitchen table, watching her study the email through those reading glasses she keeps on a chain. The morning light caught the steel in her hair as she flipped open a fresh yellow legal pad. She wrote 3 words at the top. Not beaten, shift remedy, but they own it now, I said. It's done. The car? Yes. She set down her pen. But Emily, think about what this really shows. They didn't just take your property. They manipulated you into signing it over under false pretenses. Then they disposed of it against your interests while you were still paying expenses. I blinked at her. In my head, I could still hear Mom's voice. It's just for insurance purposes, honey. It's temporary. Trust us. We're family. Aunt Marlene spread out our evidence folders again. Look at these highlighted sections, she said, tapping each quote. Every single one shows their intent. They never meant this to be about insurance savings. They planned to give your car to Derek all along. My throat felt tight. So, what do we do? She pulled up the state court website on her tablet. We shift from trying to get the car back to getting you made whole financially. Small claims court has a limit of $5,000, but civil court, she smiled. Civil court lets us go after everything. We spent the next 3 hours building a damages spreadsheet, insurance premiums paid after they gave the car away, every repair bill and oil change, bus passes and ride-share receipts since losing transportation, lost wages from being late to work, even the emotional distress of public humiliation at the graduation party. Don't forget opportunity costs, Aunt Marlene said, reaching for her calculator. What could you have done with all that money if they hadn't deceived you? The total made me catch my breath. Over $12,000 when we factored in everything. I aligned the stack of supporting documents, each one tagged with sticky notes in Aunt Marlene's precise handwriting. The pile sat square and solid on the table, like a foundation I could finally build on. Outside, evening was settling in. The neighbor's porch light clicked on automatically, and somewhere down the street, a car door slammed. Probably someone coming home from work. Someone who didn't have to count bus transfers or beg rides from co-workers. I stared at our work spread across the table. The damages, spreadsheet. The court forms bookmarked on the laptop, the email that had felt like checkmate this morning, but now looked more like a confession. Marlene, I said quietly, what's our next move? She took off her glasses and looked at me steadily. The kitchen clock ticked in the silence between us. The next morning, Aunt Marlene's dining room looked like a war room. We had documentation spread across every surface, receipts chronologically, ordered, text messages printed and highlighted, bank statements with relevant transactions circled in red. My whole financial life laid bare in manila folders and post-it notes. Remember, Marlene said, tapping her pen against the civil complaint form. We're not just claiming they took your car. We're showing they deliberately misled you to get control of it. She'd been drilling this point home all morning, and I could practically recite the legal terms in my sleep now. You know that feeling when you're finally putting names to things that have been gnawing at you? That's how it felt writing fraudulent misrepresentation and unjust enrichment on the official forms. Each word carried the weight of all those nights I'd lain awake, replaying their casual lies about insurance savings. We worked through lunch, my hands cramping as I signed affidavits and initialed exhibits. Marlene's precision was relentless. Every document had to be perfectly aligned in its plastic sleeve, every tab color-coded by category. The story of my betrayal, told in printer paper and official stamps. Check this timeline again, she said, sliding over a spreadsheet that tracked every payment I'd made since the day they registered the car. The judge needs to see the pattern, how they kept taking your money even after they decided to give the car away. I remembered the smell of fresh coffee brewing at 5 a.m., the quiet satisfaction of checking off each bill as paid. Back when I thought being responsible meant something. They knew, I said, throat tight. They knew every time I handed over insurance money that they were planning to give it to Derek. Exactly, and now we prove it. By sunset, we had assembled what Marlene called an ironclad paper trail. 3 copies of everything, 1 for the court, 1 for service, 1 for our records. I took photos of each exhibit with my phone just in case. The whole thing filled the accordion file so thick it barely closed. That night, sleep came in fits and starts. I kept seeing the clerk's window in my mind, imagining all the ways tomorrow could go wrong. Around 4 a.m., I gave up and made coffee, sitting at my kitchen table with the file beside me like a silent companion. The courthouse opened at 8. I was there at 7:30, pacing the marble hallway, checking and rechecking that every paper was in its place. When the clerk's window finally lit up, my hands were steady as I pushed the file across the counter. "Civil filing?" the clerk asked, barely glancing up. "Yes." My voice came out stronger than I expected. "Fraudulent misrepresentation and unjust enrichment." She thumbed through the papers, stamping and logging each section. The case number she wrote looked impossibly official. CV 2023-1847. Just like that, my private pain became public record. The service copies went out that afternoon. One to my parents' house, one to Derek's apartment. I tried not to picture their faces when they opened the envelopes, but my mind kept going there anyway. Mom's voicemail came just before dinner. "Emily, this is ridiculous. Family matters should stay in the family. Call me." Back immediately. I didn't. Derek's silence spoke volumes. No texts, no calls, no social media posts about his gift car for the first time in weeks. That evening, Aunt Marlene came over with her legal pad and a thermos of tea. "Time to prep your testimony," she said, settling into my kitchen chair. "You'll need to tell this story clearly, without letting emotion take over." We practiced for hours. She'd fire questions at me, making me stick to facts and dates instead of feelings. "The judge doesn't need to hear about 20 years of family dynamics," she reminded me. "Just the specific actions that led to this loss." When she left, I hung tomorrow's outfit on my bedroom door, my charcoal gray suit pressed crisp and professional. The accordion file sat on the kitchen chair beneath it, ready for morning. In a few hours, everything would change. One way or another, the truth would have its day in court. The courthouse steps felt steeper that morning. Each one brought me closer to the moment I'd rehearsed 100 times in my kitchen. You know that feeling when your whole life narrows down to a single hour? That's what it was like, walking through those heavy wooden doors. The marble floors gleamed like frozen water, echoing every footstep. Other people's whispered disputes floated around me, divorces, contracts, small claims. But all I could focus on was the weight of my accordion file and the steady presence of Aunt Marlene beside me. Mrs. Henderson from 2 doors down sat in the gallery, pretending to read her phone. She'd been there at the graduation party, clapping while they stripped away my car. Now she was here for the aftermath, probably ready to report back to the neighborhood gossip chain. The thought made my neck burn, but I kept my eyes forward. My parents settled into chairs behind their lawyer, Mom's spine ruler straight, Dad's hands clasped too tight in his lap. They had that look they always got when family embarrassment threatened their carefully maintained image. Derek sprawled in the chair furthest from me, thumb sliding over his phone screen like this was just another boring morning he had to endure. "All rise," the bailiff called, and my heart jumped into my throat. The Honorable Judge Martinez presiding. The judge's robes whispered as she took her seat, scanning our case file with sharp eyes behind rimless glasses. "Carter versus Carter and Carter," she read, glancing between us. "Counsel, your appearances for the record?" The attorneys stated their names. I sat very still, my hands flat on the table to keep them from shaking. Aunt Marlene's knee pressed against mine under the counsel table. Our prearranged signal to breathe. "Opening statements," Judge Martinez directed, and my attorney rose. My voice quivered starting out, laying the foundation of years of work and savings. But by the second paragraph, describing the specific insurance reasons conversation, I found my rhythm. The dates and dollars flowed just like we'd practiced, each one a brick in the wall of truth I was building. "Your Honor," I said, "the documentation shows a clear pattern. They induced me to transfer registration using specific promises about insurance savings. They continued accepting my premium payments even after planning to give the car away. And my brother," I paused, feeling Aunt Marlene's subtle nod. "My brother knew the car was mine when he accepted it as a supposed gift." My parents' lawyer stood, waving the title transfer papers like a flag. "The vehicle is legally registered to my clients, Your Honor. They had full authority to transfer ownership as they saw fit." Judge Martinez leaned forward. "Show me the exhibits regarding these insurance reasons discussions." We handed up the text messages, the email chains, the insurance statements with my name on the payments. The judge's eyes narrowed as she read, her questions getting more precise. "So you continued drafting premiums from Ms. Carter's account even after deciding to transfer the vehicle?" she asked my parents' attorney. The lawyer shifted his weight. "And you, young man," she turned to Derek, who finally looked up from his phone. You were aware your sister purchased this vehicle originally? The courtroom air seemed to crystallize. Derek's throat worked as he swallowed, glancing at our parents, then back at the judge. The silence stretched like taffy. Mr. Carter, Judge Martinez prompted, did you or did you not know the car was purchased by your sister? I watched my brother's face, seeing that same smirk from the graduation party trying to form. But under the judge's steady gaze, it withered. He swallowed again. Yes, he finally said, the word falling into the quiet like a stone. I knew she bought it. The judge made a note, her pen scratching against paper. The sound seemed to fill the whole courtroom. Even Mrs. Henderson had stopped pretending to read her phone. My hands were steady now as I touched the final exhibit, a photo of that giant bow on my car's hood, my brother's graduation celebration happening around it. The image that had haunted my dreams for weeks looked smaller now, reduced to just another piece of evidence in a folder. Judge Martinez set her pen down and folded her hands on the bench. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Having reviewed the evidence and testimony presented, she began, this court finds several concerning elements. While legal title to the vehicle did rest with the defendants, the financial record tells a different story. I felt Aunt Marlene's hand steady on my arm as the judge continued. The documentation shows a clear pattern of misrepresentation and unjust enrichment. Text messages and emails demonstrate the defendants specifically induced transfer of registration under the guise of insurance benefits. Yet, they continued accepting premium payments from the plaintiff even after deciding to permanently transfer the vehicle to another party. She turned to where Derek sat, his usual cockiness withering under her direct gaze. Moreover, the younger Mr. Carter's knowing acceptance of property he understood belonged to his sister extends liability to him as recipient. The color drained from Derek's face as Judge Martinez referenced the graduation party. The public nature of the gifting ceremony, conducted while the plaintiff was still making payments, demonstrates a particularly troubling disregard for basic fairness. My parents' shoulders slumped lower with each word. Mom's perfectly styled hair couldn't hide how her chin trembled. Dad's hands gripped his knees, knuckles white. Therefore, the judge continued, this court orders full reimbursement of all documented expenses related to the cow vehicle, including but not limited to the down payment, insurance premiums, maintenance costs, and damages for loss of use. Mrs. Henderson shifted in her seat behind us. I could practically hear the neighborhood gossip machine spinning up. The clerk will note a 30-day window for complete repayment, Judge Martinez said. If the defendants fail to comply, the court will consider enforcement options, including wage garnishment and potential repossession of the vehicle to satisfy the judgment. My knees went watery under the table. Aunt Marlene squeezed my hand once, grounding me. The judge signed the orders with crisp efficiency. Ms. Carter, you may collect your copies from the clerk. Defendants, I strongly suggest you meet these deadlines. This court retains jurisdiction to enforce compliance. She fixed my parents and brother with a final stern look. We're adjourned. The bang of her gavel seemed to wake everyone from a trance. Chairs scraped as people stood. My parents wouldn't look at me, staring at the floor as their lawyer whispered urgently to them. Derek's phone had disappeared into his pocket, his face ashen. I gathered my papers with hands that barely shook, following Aunt Marlene to the clerk's window. The certified copies felt solid against my chest as we pushed through the heavy courthouse doors into the EA's bright noon sunshine. On the wide steps, I paused to breathe air that didn't smell like wood polish and judgment. The memory of that giant graduation bow flickered through my mind, but it didn't sting like before. The story was shifting now, transforming from humiliation to something else entirely. Ready? Aunt Marlene asked quietly beside me. I looked down at the court orders in my hands, documentation of truth finally recognized. Behind us, I could hear other people leaving the courthouse, their footsteps echoing on marble steps. A new chapter was starting, but that would be tomorrow's page. The notice arrived exactly 31 days after the judgment. A plain white envelope with the court's stamp, containing a single-page order that read like poetry. Enforcement approved, repossession authorized. I traced the embossed seal with my fingertip, remembering the way that graduation bow had looked against my car's hood. My phone lit up. Derek. "You can't do this." His voice crackled with panic. "That car is mine. The title." "The title doesn't matter anymore," I said, surprised by how calm I felt. "You had your chance to pay the judgment. All of you did." "This is insane. Mom and Dad are freaking out. Mrs. Peterson just called them about seeing some legal notice in the paper." "Public records are funny that way," I said. "Everything's right there in black and white for anyone who looks." He made a strangled sound. "You're destroying this family over a stupid car." "No, Derek. You all did that when you decided theft was a reasonable graduation gift." I ended the call and blocked his number. 3 days later, I was fixing dinner when a diesel engine rumbled outside. Through my kitchen window, I watched a flatbed tow truck idle at Derek's curb. The driver, clipboard in hand, walked up his driveway where my old car sat gleaming. Derek must have washed it that morning, probably hoping that would somehow matter. Movement caught my eye, blinds twitching in the Petersons' window next door. Across the street, Mrs. Henderson stood openly on her porch, phone to her ear. These were the same neighbors who'd clapped and cheered at the graduation party, their phones up to capture the heartwarming moment. Now they watched a different kind of photo op unfold. The driver was efficient. Within minutes, my former car rode high on the flatbed, straps securing it for transport. Derek stood in his doorway, arms crossed, face rigid. He didn't wave as the truck pulled away. That evening, my phone buzzed with a deposit notification. I opened my banking app, watched the settlement amount populate my account. The number looked like possibility, like breathing room. My fingers were perfectly steady as I closed the screen. "Check your email," Aunt Marlene told me over the phone later. "I sent you something important." I found her message, a bullet-pointed list of final steps with insurance policy in bold at the top. "You're still paying premiums on their family policy," she said. "Time to cut that last thread. Get your own coverage, on your terms." "You're right." I opened my laptop, pulling up local insurance options. "Clean break. And Emily?" Her voice softened. "I heard through Caroline that your parents had to skip the country club fundraiser. Apparently, some of the board members expressed concerns about the court records." I thought about my mother's carefully curated social circle, how she'd spent years polishing their family image to a high gloss. Public records have a way of tarnishing reputations. "Indeed." Aunt Marlene paused. "Caroline also mentioned your brother's firm is reviewing his recent promotion. Something about character considerations." I said nothing, letting that sink in. Actions and consequences. A simple equation. Later that night, I printed 2 checklists, dealership inventory specs and insurance requirements. They looked clean and orderly next to my coffee mug, promise wrapped in printer paper. I slipped them into a fresh folder, set it by the door for morning. The kitchen felt different as I turned out the light. Quieter, maybe. Or maybe that was just me, standing straighter in the dark. The folder waited by my keys, ready for tomorrow. But that's another story, and it was time to let this one settle into its new shape. One where truth had weight, documentation had power, and karma wore a tow truck's lights. Morning light was just breaking when I pulled into the dealership lot. I'd chosen this time carefully. First appointment, fresh start. Through the glass walls, I could see salespeople setting up for the day, coffee cups steaming as they booted computers and straightened desks. The door chimed as I walked in, and a woman about my age looked up with a genuine smile. Her nameplate read, "Sandra." "You must be Emily," she said, extending her hand. "I loved your email about exactly what you're looking for. Very thorough." I smiled back. I believe in being precise. We walked the lot together, and I had to admit, Sandra had done her homework. Every vehicle she showed me matched my requirements: reliability ratings, safety features, service records. But it was the third one that made me pause. Bright red. Not flashy red or look-at-me red, but the kind of red that says someone chose it on purpose, with confidence. I ran my hand along the hood, remembering how my old car had felt under my palm that first day. But this was different. This wasn't just replacement. This was upgrade. Want to take it for a spin? Sandra held out the key fob. The engine purred to life, and everything about it felt right. The seat adjusted perfectly, the steering wheel smooth under my hands. We did the test drive loop, and I found myself taking the long way back. The price is exactly where we discussed, Sandra said as we returned, and your credit check came back stellar. In her office, she laid out the paperwork with professional efficiency. I'll need your signature here, and… She paused, looking up. Just your signature, correct? No co-signers or family additions. Just me, I said, and the words tasted like victory. I signed my name, clear, confident strokes. No one else's name needed or wanted on that dotted line. Sandra processed everything while I called my new insurance company, setting up coverage that was mine alone. When she handed me the final papers, I tucked them into my portfolio with the fresh insurance card. Congratulations, she said, passing me the keys. She's all yours. The drive home felt like breathing pure oxygen. I cracked the windows just enough to let spring air swirl through the car, carrying away old whispers of family obligation and be reasonable. The new car, smell, wrapped around me like permission to move forward. I turned onto my street just as Mrs. Henderson happened to be adjusting her flower baskets. Across the way, Mr. Peterson suddenly needed to check his sprinklers. I pulled into my driveway, my space, my terms, and took my time stepping out. The car looked right there, like it had been waiting for this spot. Through my peripheral vision, I caught the neighbors trying to be subtle about their staring. Let them look. Let them see what replacing theft with truth looks like. Movement in my parents' window caught my eye. Familiar silhouettes trying to seem busy while stealing glances. Their country club membership was under review now, I'd heard. Amazing how quickly social circles could tighten when words like court order and fraud finding started floating around. In Derek's upstairs window, a curtain twitched. His promotion had evaporated last week. Something about character concerns after the judgment hit public records. Funny how karma works sometimes. I opened the glove box, tucked the insurance card into its designated slot. Everything in its place, everything properly documented. The new owner's manual sat pristine beside it, warranty cards paperclipped to the correct pages. Standing back, I pulled out my phone and photographed the VIN number. Old habits die hard, and some habits are worth keeping. The numbers went straight into my organized files, another piece of proof that some lessons stick. The metal felt warm against my back as I leaned against the driver's door, savoring the moment. In my hand, a single key caught the morning light. No family lanyard, no shared ring, no strings attached. Just one key, one owner, one truth. I held it up, watching sunlight glint off the bright red key fob. Never sign away what you've earned.